Hey everybody, it's Chris Bendrell from Alamo Music Center, and today we're going to talk a little bit about string instruments, how to take care of them, how to know what the proper size for the instrument is if you're a first-time player, and make sure that in the Texas heat you're going to keep your instrument safe, you're not going to have your varnish melting off, all that good stuff that you need to know to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to keep your instrument sounding good and keep it good for the school year. So to start off, finding the proper cello size is probably one of the more subjective parts of beginning with string instruments. Violin size and viola size, we'll get to that, is a little bit less subjective. But for cello, if you're trying to get an idea of which size might be right for you, you can go off height. In general, players that are above 5 feet tall play a full-size instrument. Players between 4'6" and 5 feet tend to play around the 3/4 size, although most adults play a full size regardless of their height. And then players between 4 feet tall and 4'6", generally under the ages of 12, will play a half size. However, it should be noted that depending on your arm span, your age is not necessarily what determines what size instrument you should be playing. I started playing when I was 10 years old and I started on a full-size instrument, so it really just depends on your arm span. It's important that you're sitting down while you're trying to find the right size, and the best thing that you can do is go into the store, try a few out, and that way, the professionals will be able to help you determine what the right size is. So when you're sitting down, you want to have the cello positioned kind of so that the back of the instrument is in line with your spine. So you want to be sitting with your feet flat on the floor, and if you can, you want to create a 90-degree angle with your legs and the chair. So once you're at that point, the bouts of the cello should be kind of aligned about 4 inches in from your knees. So you should be able to kind of move the instrument back and forth like this. Now, the C peg is going to be directly behind your head here, and you're going to have the end pin extended out at a good height so that the instrument is resting on your chest up here. At that point, you know that you've got the right size instrument. Now, sometimes we'll try to compensate with the end pin going up, and I'll show you what that looks like for a second. So if I bring the end pin up here, and this would be in the case of having a smaller instrument, you can see how this is a little bit awkward. I can't really move around the instrument. Doesn't necessarily give me the feel that I need. Or the reverse problem, if the end pin is too short, because the instrument is too big, then I'm going to be kind of flailing around and not going to be able to position the left and right hand properly. So a good rule of thumb is if you have the end pin extended out at a normal length, and you can move your arms around the instrument like this, it's about the right size instrument if you can touch each side. So generally speaking, people over 5 feet play full-size instruments. People between 4'6" and 5 feet tend to play 3/4 size. And then if you're between 4 feet and 4'6", you usually play a half size. Now that's not the end-all be-all standard, but those are just some kind of guidelines for you. Of course, the best thing to do is to go into the store, play the instruments, and make sure that you've got the right size. So in order to find the right size violin or viola, you're going to want to start by looking at your arm length. You're going to want to extend your left arm out straight like this with the violin up to your neck. Bring your palm back to the scroll of the instrument, and then wrap your fingers around the scroll to where they can touch the peg box. Now, if your fingers cannot touch the peg box, the instrument is too large. However, if you have this bow in your arm right here, it's likely that the instrument is too small. If it gets scrunched up like this and you're playing a half size, the instrument is probably too small. However, of course, there's no size in violin larger than full size. So adults and in general students that are above 5 feet are okay playing a full size. You can be assured in that. So from there, if you are trying to find your viola size, there are various sizes larger than the violin beyond 14, 15, 15 and a half inch, 16, and 16 and a half. So if you're just starting out, it's likely if you're in 5th grade, 6th grade, that you're between 14 and 15 and a half, somewhere in that range. And again, you just apply that same technique where you bring your palm back to the scroll and wrap your fingers around the peg box. And you should be able to find the right size doing that. So as you play your instrument, you're going to accumulate rosin dust beneath the bridge. And so, as you see right here, I've got some little flakes on the instrument. You're going to want to have a microfiber cloth or other soft material that you can use. An old t-shirt should work, just nothing abrasive. And you're going to want to gently wipe the dust off of the instrument like so. You want to get under the strings in front of the bridge, and this is true whether you play violin, viola, or cello. And you're just going to want to lightly brush it off. Make sure that that dust does not accumulate. As I mentioned, if the instrument gets hot, that dust can actually start to melt onto the instrument and damage the varnish. So doing this will help avoid damage to the instrument and keep it looking good. Now, you also want to try to wipe off the strings as well. That'll help them last longer. And to do that, you just want to wrap the cloth around the strings and clean them like so. Finally, if you want to clean up the fingerboard, just unfold your cloth or t-shirt or whatever you're using, and then bring it under the strings, but above the fingerboard, and just run it across the instrument like this. And that'll keep it nice and clean. If you have a lot of rosin buildup at the bottom of your fingerboard or on your strings, it's possible to use a low-grade solution of rubbing alcohol. You can apply that to the cloth first and just wrap it around the strings or the bottom of the fingerboard. Now, if you're really concerned about getting it polished, getting it looking good, or if it's too much buildup, the best thing to do, of course, is to bring it into the store. So rosin is a compound of different oils and acids that allow the horsehair on the bow to stick to the strings, create friction, and ultimately make sound. There are a few different types of rosin that will work for violin, viola, or cello, and those are what I recommend when you're first starting out. I would try to stay away from any cheap block rosin because it's going to create a lot of dust and not stick to the instrument very well. So what I recommend is using Perostro rosin. This is the cello specific one, but they have a rosin formula that will work for violin, viola, and cello as well. Or a more popular one is probably the jade rosin. This is definitely going to work for violin, viola, or cello. It's not going to leave a lot of dust, and it's still going to give you good contact with the strings. So definitely recommend those two. Now, when you're applying the rosin to the bow, and I'll give you an example of this, what you want to do is take the bow, make sure you have a good grip of it in your right hand, and then in your left hand, you want to apply the rosin by running it across the horsehair like so. You want to make sure it's applied evenly and that you have just as much at the tip as you do at the frog. Again, you don't need too much rosin. If it's brand new bow hair, you need more than you do if you already have rosin on it, as I do right now. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and that's going to keep me good for a while. Now, let's talk about how often you should rosin the bow. Do you need to rosin it every day? Do you need to rosin it every week? The truth of it is, it all depends on how much you play. If you're playing for 6 hours a day, you're getting ready for a recital, then absolutely rosin the bow every day. It won't be too much. However, if you're just filling in 30 minutes of practice here, 30 minutes of practice there, you're probably okay only rosining it maybe 2 or 3 days a week. Ask your teacher, of course, but I definitely don't recommend rosining the bow every day, as it will cause buildup to fall on the instrument that could potentially damage the varnish as well as the bow. If you go to practice your instrument and you realize that your strings are too out of tune to use the fine tuners at the bottom of the instrument, what we recommend is that you ask your teacher to use the pegs for you. Usually, we don't recommend attempting to tune with the pegs until you've been taught to do so by your teacher, because that's how we end up with the most snapped strings. So if you notice that your instrument is loose, I'll give you guys an example like this. If the instrument's loose like that, you can't get it at pitch, and it's not going to get there with the fine tuners. What needs to happen is a professional adjust the pegs for you. So bring it into the shop or ask your teacher if they can do it for you. That's really the best way to avoid damage to the instrument, avoid breaking a string, and having to replace it, of course. If you do happen to break a string on your instrument or have other trouble with the instrument, I recommend that you bring it to your teacher or a music store as soon as possible, as there can be internal damage that's done to the instrument that you can't see from the outside. So when you bring it to your teacher or you bring it to your music retail store, you can explain what's happened and they can help ensure that the instrument is going to get back into playing condition the proper way. If you see that the bridge is going at an angle, you definitely want to get it checked out immediately, as over time, if it stays at that angle, the tension of the strings can cause it to permanently warp and cause further damage to the instrument. So when you're ready to put your instrument away for the day, you want to loosen the bow so that it's loose enough to where the hair is not going to get caught on a zipper or anything, but the camber of the bow returns to its normal curvature like this. So storing the bow like this is fine. We turn the button counterclockwise to loosen and clockwise to tighten. So you want to make sure that you loosen it every time that you put the instrument away. That keeps the camber of the bow maintained and ensures that it will last you a lifetime. The best way to store the instrument when you're not using it is in its case, whether that be a soft case, a bag, or a hard shell case, maybe carbon fiber or fiberglass. This helps the instrument stay in tune when you're not using it, helps protect it from accidental damage. You definitely do not want to leave the instrument out of its case leaning up against a corner, sitting on a table, anything like that. The instruments are very sensitive. Even in an air-conditioned space, the changes in humidity and temperature can cause the instrument to go out of tune and potentially damage the instrument. So you definitely want to keep it in the case. If you can, keep it in a corner on the ground, maybe in your room, somewhere where, preferably on carpet, it's not going to be susceptible to damage by impact or anything like that. So perhaps the most vital piece of information that you can learn as you're getting started in the world of string instruments is never leave your instrument in the car. There are a lot of reasons for this, but the primary reasons for this are you can melt your varnish off, and the rosin can actually melt onto the instrument. Now, when the rosin melts onto the instrument, it's incredibly difficult to get off, can damage the instrument permanently, and there can also be internal parts of the instrument that can get damaged. The sound post can get crooked and start to lean a certain way towards the top of the instrument and crack the instrument eventually. So in general, just never leave your instrument in the car. Don't even think about it. Even if it's cold, even if it's 70 degrees, just don't even think about it. Don't leave your instrument in the car. Thank you all for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, but if you have any other questions about instruments, taking care of them, just string instruments in general, or you want to inquire about lessons, be sure to give us a call at Alamo Music Center or leave us a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, and thank you for watching.